Now, I want to show off the proper and much more practical and refined setup for Reapers. This is how you do damage, and it's actually quite simple. It's only 2 combos. One of them is 2 abilities, and the other is 4 abilities. And you're pretty much just filling in between the cooldowns of those in order to really pull this off. Sometimes that filler is you dodging the boss, so obviously very, very, very simple. And so I'll go over everything as we go through. I'll go over the glyphs and why I chose them, and a lot of it's very straightforward, and I'm sure a lot of you will just think, oh well, that's pretty obvious, but I wanted to make sure that everyone was on the same page. And of course, in my last video, I completely blanked on nostrums and a couple of other things, and so that made it completely pointless of a video, which is kind of funny. But anyway, your first combo is Cable Step into Shadow Burst. Shadow Burst is your most damaging ability that you can even cast, and it even has a chance to actually knock enemies to the ground, and this is incredibly powerful. And so I take the cooldown reduction on it because having this cast as often as possible is great. This is only going to take up a few seconds to cast, so this means that it's extremely safe to cast. It goes off very quickly, and of course Cable Step starts out with a stun, so this is so incredibly safe that it's actually quite hilarious. And with Cable Step, I elected to pick up the 2nd and 3rd glyph, which increases the attack speed after Cable Step hits, and it also increases the next hit, which is of Shadow Burst, which is pretty important considering it already does 38 base damage. So that's 3,838 damage if you prefer, and 20% more on top of that is insane. So obviously that's something you always want to cast. This is your priority here. You always want to get these off. This will interrupt other shit you're doing just because it's so much damage, and it comes with a free stun that you just can't turn it down. Our second rotation is another simple one. It's Death Spiral into Double Shear, into Grim Strike, and then into Sundering. Of course, we start off with Death Spiral because it will provide us with a buff to Double Shear, twofold. It will increase the damage by 20% with the glyph, and it will naturally double the damage of Double Shear, because if you use pretty much any ability before Double Shear will do double damage. And so with the Skill Power glyph and the Double Shear glyph and the Grim Strike glyph, what you're seeing here is about 1,400 base damage out of Death Spiral, about 2,000 damage out of Double Shear, and then I believe 2,600-ish damage out of Grim Strike. And then after that, an ungodly amount of damage from Sundering Strike with a high chance for it to crit, as I take the double crit rate rune as well as the skill power. And of course, since Sundering Strike does more damage to lower health targets, this means that you may be doing 40k when the boss is at 100% health, but when he reaches lower health, suddenly you're hitting for like 60k. That's not even crits. So obviously, it gets pretty out of hand pretty quick. And so this makes it a very powerful ability, but even still, you're going to want to interrupt it if Cable Step, well, I should say Shadow Burst comes off cooldown. So, what else is there? Well, not much, actually. That's pretty much it. So I'm going to show you real quick what all of that looks like. So now we've made some friends, so they're going to come towards us. I'm going to let them come in. I'm also going to show it on the BAM, of course. Also very slow, agonizing this. And that was the most annoying interrupt, I gotta say. But yes, I would have followed it up with Sundering Strike there. And now, of course, I would again go and Shadow Burst, which, as you see, it just did an ungodly amount of damage. It's just Shadow Burst for you. So, what do you do in between those cooldowns? Because you're not always just gonna, have those cooldowns, always off. Well, there's a number of things you can do. Again, you can pad some of the time by casting Pendulum Strike, which will keep them rooted for 3 seconds, and it will pretty much guarantee that the after explosion Sundering Strike will hit. And it also puts you in perfect range of Whipsaw. However, Whipsaw is not very good unless you're soloing, because it doesn't do very good DPS, and it's mainly used for its healing abilities. And when you're in a group, you have a healer. It's their job to heal you, and they usually don't have much of a problem doing that. So you're not really going to use this ability that often. You may use it, but it's not very common. It's situational. But if you're looking for the most amount of damage outside of the actual, combos here, you're going to cast Shadow Lash. Shadow Lash takes about 5-ish, 4.5-ish seconds to fully cast, and it gives you a shit ton of mana, and it has a lot of hits. And it's really actually a common theme with a lot of your abilities here, that they hit more than once, and that's it's just flat out very common. And I've been experimenting with the Forceful Crux because of that. Just for the fact that there's so many little hits that end up coming out that have a fairly high chance to crit, that I figure that possibly you might be able to get use out of Forceful. But that's just a hypothesis, not a theory. There's no mathematics to back it up. It's just a hypothesis. So take that with a grain of salt. So what else is there? Because we've pretty much covered everything on this bar here. We have Soul Reversal. This is pointless in PvE. There's no use. We have our Smite. Really, this does a good amount of damage. Its damage is doubled on knockdown opponents, and it only takes a second to cast, but it's very wise to use this on enemies when they're going to do something that you don't want them to do, basically, because it is a 2.5 second stun, and that's very useful, and it also has quite a lot of range. So I honestly suggest just saving this for when the boss is going to end up doing a nasty ability that you just want to interrupt. So it's not really meant as much for your DPS rotation as it is for stopping the enemy from doing damage. We also have our ability Shadow Reaping. Now, Shadow Reaping is unique because it's only a 3-minute cooldown. Now, when you have Shadow Reaping active, you're probably going to want to bring a mana potion, because this will allow you to not have to cast Shadow Lash, because Shadow Lash does less damage than this combo here, and this combo does less damage than the Cable Step Shadow Burst combo, of course. And so not having to cast Shadow Lash is pretty important, and basically what you do with Shadow Reaping is you just hit it and you spam this combo, these 4 abilities here, the Death Spiral, Double Shear, Grim Strike, Sundering Strike combo. And obviously that's going to end up taking a fair amount of mana, not too much, but it will eat through your mana enough that in some cases you may use a mana potion, depending on how much mana you started out with. So, the interesting thing to note about Shadow Reaping is that if the fight is longer than 3 minutes, you can hit Shadow Reaping right after your first combo, which is Cable Step into Shadow Burst. And once you've done that, then you can maybe you can hit it before Cable Step, so you can have Cable Step right away. That's all up to you. But the point there is that you're going to have it up again before the boss dies, and so this means that you get to use it 2 times, and you therefore get a lot more damage out of all of your abilities because of that. And of course, this is going to make your DPS spike a lot. And when there's a low HP burn phase, like if the enemy reaches 30% health, they reach a burn phase, such as in Balor's Temple. Obviously, using Shadow Reaping is very good because it reduces the cooldown of these 4 abilities here, as well as some others. And Sundering Strike does more damage to lower health monsters, and since you're fighting a monster that has lower health, obviously it's going to wreck them. So, it's pretty amusing. So, I very highly suggest that if you don't know how long your fights are lasting, to take out a stopwatch or something and just time your fights, see how long they are, and just use Shadow Reaping as you otherwise would. And once you've figured out how long the fights are, then you can use Shadow Reaping as a, just flat out, cast at the start and then cast again when it's needed. Again, very powerful ability, and you're definitely going to want it just with a lot of mana. Otherwise, if you don't have enough mana, if you're at like half mana or possibly even 75% mana, you may want to hit a mana potion. Whichever kind you choose obviously changes the timing of hitting that mana potion, but hey, for some reason they crafted these ones and I don't know why. Moving along, we also have Smite, which I think I went over this. I think I did. You're mainly going to use this to interrupt shit, not really do damage. But I really want to talk about Retribution and Shadow Step. Shadow Step provides iframes, and I think some people don't realize that it does. And so it actually can be used just like Retribution in some senses. And honestly, Retribution is just a really, really dangerous skill because it's not a backstab. It's just going to charge you towards the enemy. So this means if they have, like a combination hit, they hit twice, pretty typically, the second hit is going to be the one that hits harder. And so you're going to stop the first hit, and you're going to be shot straight into the second hit. And it's probably going to kill you because you're pretty squishy. So, not such a great idea. You're going to want to use it on things that are going to only hit you once, effectively, or you're going to want to use it as an absolute oh shit button. Otherwise, you're trying to use Pendulum Strike and Shadow Step to really get out of those situations. Other than that, there's not anything else to talk about other than the glyphs, which I went over as I was going on, but there are 7 points missing. Now, those 7 points can be put into a lot of different things. Fleet-footed Shadow Step is my favorite. This makes you have 50 increased movement speed. Not 50%, but just a flat 50 stat for 2 seconds after the skill is used, and that's only in combat. This is very useful, honestly. I like it quite a lot. But there are a lot of other things you can use. You may notice that I don't have Energetic Grim Strike. Grim Strike is a 9-second cooldown, and it's more like an 8-second cooldown when you're using your Nostrums, and it's just not worth it to pick up the 30% chance to eliminate a cooldown of an ability that is so short cooldown, and it isn't even your highest damage ability. It's not even your second highest damage ability. So, it's not even... it's just not something you want to do. You know, if it was a 30% chance to eliminate the cooldown of Shadow Burst, it'd be good, but it's not. So this is something you're not going to want to pick. Some people might like to pick up Restorative Double Shear if they are soloing. This will give you about 3% HP every single time you cast Double Shear. This is mildly useful. It's not very useful, but it's mildly useful. There's also a couple of other things you can do here. You can increase the damage of Whipsaw. Again, if you're soloing, this may be useful since you're going to be casting Whipsaw more often, and so this will give you a DPS boost. The increased attack speed on Shadow Burst isn't worth it. And the reason why is because it's only 17%, and you're already increasing it by 50%. So that extra 17%, you may not even notice it, quite honestly. It's just not good enough to warrant the 4 points. I mean, if it was like a 2 point, maybe, but it's not. It's a 4 point, so we're gonna ignore it. Obviously the ones on Soul Reversal and Retaliate are silly. Retribution, you're not using very often, so we're not gonna use that. This one's trash. This one's not going to do you very much, and so really you're left with only a handful of choices. Now, there are, of course, other choices to be made. You may disagree with me on a few things, but really for me, Fleet-Footed Shadow Step is the way to go. That's just what I prefer. It allows you to avoid taking more damage, and I feel personally that that is the most important thing. Not taking the damage in the first place, as opposed to healing it back, is just, you know, in a sense, superior. Now that we've gotten all of that out of the way, let's actually fight this Bam here and show off the, attack pattern, the combos, and maybe you'll get an idea of what it looks like to actually fight with this. Again, it's really simple, so won't be too hard, especially since this Bam is not hard. And I should also add that I am really cautious with BAMs. I don't know why. I guess it's just a mental thing. But, when I'm soloing BAMs, I tend to be cautious. I'll try not to be, but for demonstrative purposes. You may notice me playing a little bit more defensively than I should. Anyway, let's go ahead and pop the Nostrum, and let's kill this guy. That is the most brilliant teleport ever. I missed his back. Oh, no, I didn't miss his back. Awesome. See the 200k crit there? It's always nice. Brilliant teleport again. Mess that one up. That's been fine. God, I love that. It's like he wants to move when that happens, but he just can't. Let's try to get behind him. Oh, crits. That's really unfortunate. Apparently I should have given it something, but... That was was hoping I'd get a crit there as well, but I didn't think I'd actually be hit by that. See that? Really, really, really simple. Incredibly simple. And not too hard to execute. So, not really much to worry about. And not really much to get intimidated over. And you could actually cast Shadow Ash a few less times if I actually picked up these regeneration notes for MP. Of course, and you know, using the proper mana elixir also would have helped, but otherwise you saw just how simple it is to actually pull off the proper Reaper rotations, and it's just that easy. Not too much to worry about. Anyway, this has been Scathe. I hope this has helped.